All right, we're at the top of the hour, and we've got a lot of people on the line. So we're going to get started. My name is Sheldon. I want to welcome everyone here to our Guava webinar, Archiving Imperatives for Government Agencies. Um, I'm just marketing manager here at Guava, and I'm here with Q Mangus, our director of product marketing here at Guava. Just want to start off by thanking everyone for attending today, and we're going to have a Q&A session addressing the most frequent questions we get regarding archiving, best practices, retain, which is our archiving solution, especially as it pertains to government. So I'll be fielding some of those questions, and Q will be answering those. We've got a number of frequently asked questions we want to get through. However, if you have questions as we go through this webinar, please put them through the Q&A panel or the chat panel, and Q will be sure to address those first and foremost. How you do that is just click on the chat or the Q icon and you can type those in. Q?
Thanks everyone for being here. Yeah, we're really excited to bring you this information, and hope you can benefit from it. And yeah, if you have questions, as Sheldon said, we'll be happy to address those. Otherwise, we will be going through a number of good questions that are generally asked, especially from government agencies. So yeah, once again, glad you can all join us.
Thanks, Q. With that, let's just jump right into it then. First question, get this one a lot. What are some of the major concerns that government agencies, federal, local, usually local in these cases, have with archiving?
Great. Yeah, highly asked question. I would like to mention that there's a number of people on this call that are from the LA Digital Government Technical Conference that we had a couple weeks ago, and like to welcome you here and thank you for, of course, visiting us when you were there, and then joining us for this webinar today. Um, so yeah, to answer the question, you probably have some of these concerns, and there might be other concerns that you have as well when it comes to your emails, social media, mobile communication, and how you should be archiving it and why. But these are some of the concerns that we see. And so a big one of the top concerns that we see a lot of is that's e-discovery, the ability for an organization to perform e-discovery. So if you're in, which goes along with the secondary one, which is litigation. So if you're ever involved in any kind of litigation, um, it's essential that you have quick and easy access to your data. So you need to be able to access your email, your social media, your mobile communication. And so that's a big concern that people have, that organizations have when it comes to archiving. Can they have e-discovery tools? Can they be prepared for litigation? And that's why it's important to have a good solution that can do that. Next, you have compliance issues, right? There's a number of regulations that you as a government organization needs to deal with. And how can you be sure that you're in compliance? That's something that a lot of people are concerned with. Next is having oversight. So once again, this is kind of separate from everything we've talked about, is that no, even if you're not involved in litigation, or if you aren't worried about regulations, or maybe you're not going to be involved in some sort of an audit, you need oversight just for your own peace of mind, right? You need to be able to go through and see what your employees are communicating and how. So you need to have that oversight. So that's something that a lot of organizations are concerned with, is being able to have that oversight. Another thing is productivity. And productivity is a lot of things, right? It's your employee productivity, making sure that they have the right tools that they need to be able to do the things that they need to do on a daily basis. Not having things that distract them from their core work. And that's where, trying to find a lost email or a deleted email, or making it difficult to access older email, can really hinder your employees' productivity. So you need to be able to address that as well. Now, there's the last couple things that we see a lot of is this data. Being able to manage your data, we talked about that a little bit, being able to easily get to that data. And that's the data management and data access kind of go hand in hand. You need to be able to, if you're archiving well, first of all, you need to archive all your data. And that's part of data management. Being able to take those off of your email servers, put them into an archive, which will then make your email system run better. And then being able to manage that data and quickly get to it in case of e-discovery or in case of an employee looking for that lost proverbial deleted email, right? So that's part of that as well as being able to manage and access your data. And so with that being said, with these concerns, obviously there's more, and you probably have more. And if you have others that you want to talk about, please put those through in the chat, and we'll hit on those. But the idea is, if you need an archiving solution that will address these, and a good archiving solution will. A good archiving solution will give you built-in tools for e-discovery and litigation. It will allow you to archive your email, your social media, your mobile in one central location so that you're ensured that you have compliance and that you have oversight. And it will grant your end users easy access to their own archives so that they can get to that deleted email. They can increase their productivity. And it will have easy access, and it will pull that off of your email system so that your systems run better. So that's something to really look for in a good archiving solution, is that it can address all of these concerns.
Great. So let's get right into government though, in specific though. What specific regulations or you know the government have to deal with, and that can affect how any government organization can archive or what they archive and how they do that.
Great. Yes, I kind of addressed that a little bit, but there are a number of regulations that you as a government agency need to deal with. So if you're in the federal government, there's some specific things there with the Federal Records Act, and FISMA, the Federal Information Security Management Act. And then there's another one, which is the Presidential and Federal Records Act Amendment of 2014. So you can kind of look at those. They're on the screen here. Just know that the overview of what these acts really say is that you need to be able to have information archived, your email, social media, your mobile communication. You need to have that archived and readily accessible. Then there's some other things that apply to other agencies, state, local government agencies. The Freedom of Information Act applies to basically any public entity, right? And that is that a person has access to those public records and that the courts can enforce that. And so you need to be ready to be able to comply with a FOIA request. And as we saw in the trivia a little bit, right, that it says that at least for federal agencies you need to respond to a FOIA request within 20 days. And then providing the information obviously can take longer, but that's part of the reason why you need to have an archive, is to be able, if there's a request for, say, emails that we're going across from an agency, from maybe a councilman to some of the constituents, you need to be able to access that and show that quickly and easily. And then you need to be able to redact information that shouldn't be part of the public record. And that's all something that you need to consider when you're archiving, is can you do that? And then there's some other things too, is that different states have sunshine laws, which are similar to FOIA. So I would suggest that everyone on this call, if you're a state agency or a local institution, that you look into what the laws are in your local area. Obviously, we can list those all out in this call, but one in particular, since as I stated earlier, we have a number of people that were at the LA Digital Government Summit. California in particular has the state and local record retention schedule, which is California SB 1386, and the California Public Information Act, which both of those really talk about the need to archive it talks about all of your data, your electronic data, and the ability to produce that. But in particular, it touches on that need for archiving email, archiving social media and mobile, and quickly being able to get to that. So that's the idea behind what regulations you need to be complying with and how you should comply with them. So, wow, that slide got messed up when it got converted. Adobe Connect converts our PowerPoint when we put it through here, so sometimes those get messed up. But bear with us on that. So what does it really mean to you? What does everything that we talked about on the last slide mean? Is that you need to be archiving all of your electronic communication. And it must be able to easily and readily access that communication.
Awesome, great, thank you. So I know we're gonna get into email, which is the obvious electronic communication, but I know social media has been a hot topic and in government as well. So what about social media in the workplace, especially a government agency? Can you what should we be doing around that, in terms of the corporate social media account or personal social media that people use at work? How do you deal with that?
So that's a loaded question, right? Social media is huge. People are using social media. They want to use social media at work. They want to use it at home, etc. You probably have a social media account for your agency. Um, so you need to once again have oversight of that. So the things that I would suggest, first of all, is that you need to have a policy, a social media policy. That is the first and foremost thing that you need. And you should have an electronic communication policy, meaning you should be stating right now what's appropriate and inappropriate for email, right? That policy should also include social media. If you don't have a policy, I would say one of your first action items getting off of this call is to go out and create one. And we actually have a sample social media policy that you can access. We'll put that through in the chat here in a minute for you to go and take a look at to kind of give you some groundwork. Just we've kind of based that off of some others. But the idea is you need a policy. That policy needs to state what is and is not appropriate usage at work. And then with that policy, you need to be able to enforce the policy. And the way to enforce that is with technology. And we'll touch on that later. But the idea is you need that policy to enforce it. And so first and foremost and most importantly, you need to be able to archive your social media accounts with government. You need to be able to take your government account, maybe that's your city social media page, whatever your agency is, and take the information that's put onto that and archive that and be able to have a record of everything that's been put on there. And Sheldon put that through in the chat. So if you want to take a look at that sample social media policy, please click on that link there. The other thing is that if you have your employees that are communicating on their social media in an official way, if they're communicating things out that have to do with, let's say, go back to the example of the city, that has to do with your city, you better be archiving that as well. Because that can be viewed as official government communication, right? And all these regulations state that you need to have that. And then, of course, in case of litigation, you need to be able to have that as well. So that's another part of it. If your employees want to access social media at work, but they're not using it in an official capacity, that's something you need to address on your policy as well. You may not have to archive that, but just be aware that you're kind of in some dangerous area to allow them to access that, because there's ways that they can share things that they may not, that they probably shouldn't, in a way that they shouldn't. So just be aware that that policy needs to state what can and can't be done, and then the technology needs to have oversight on it. So probably the best approach would be just to archive everyone's social media if they want access to it at work. But at the bare minimum, you need to be archiving your government social media accounts and the employee social media accounts if they're discussing it in an official way. And then on top of that, you need to be able to have monitoring, right? You need to be able to monitor for keywords, questions, and personal identifiable info. So let's say that somebody goes onto your we'll go back to the city, goes onto your city social media, your city Facebook account, and they ask you a question. They ask you, how do I sign up for the upcoming fun run? And you're like, you would hopefully be able to respond to that quickly. And so the idea of having an ability to monitor for questions or different keywords, so maybe you have a keyword that's in there that you're monitoring for some term that you don't want to be said. So maybe something where there's an issue with maybe a police force, and as we've seen in the news lately, and there's a keyword that you have in there that maybe somebody's targeting your police force, you could have a keyword in there to be able to monitor for that on your corporate social media or excuse me, your government social media. So if they've posted something on there, you'll be able to quickly find it and be able to take action on that. That's something important when it comes to social media, because there's a lot of things that are out there and that can be said. So that is the suggestion I have when it comes to social media. You need to be able to monitor it for these keywords that can prevent inappropriate content, harassment, and maybe dangerous situations. So, and then you need to be able to have that policy that dictates what can and can't be said, and then you need to be able to have that oversight of what is being said in your organization. And so I just want to hit that again. When it comes to policy, the policy needs to be clear. It needs to outline what is and is not appropriate usage. You need to train everyone on that policy, and then you need the technology, and we'll talk about that today, the technology to validate that policy and enforce it.
Awesome. So that link again is just in the chat if you want to look at this sample policy. Let's jump into mobile. How about? Do you have any advice for archiving mobile devices? And especially, what about BYOD? I mean, I know that's very common, and we get this question all the time. Well, what do you do about that?
So once again, I'll leave this slide up because it's appropriate, and I'll hit this home again. Policy. You need policies that outline how mobile devices are used in your organization. If you are allowing your employees to bring their own devices, that's fine, but you need to have a policy stating what they can't do. If they want to bring their own device and access email on that device, you need to be able to have oversight on that, and you need to obviously be archiving their email. If they want to access social media, and if they want to text your in official capacity, you need to be able to archive that and have oversight of that as well. And so the policy needs to say, if you're bringing your own device, this is what we're going to do. We're going to archive and have oversight on these kind of communications. So what you can do with that, let me flip slides here. You can, once again, have that policy, but you can actually have oversight of the mobile communication on BYOD by having what they call a dual persona. And what a dual persona does is it leaves personal communication as being personal. So if they're using the native messaging system, like on iPhone, it's an iMessage. Android has different apps that they use as well, but it's a native system for text messaging. If they're using that, they can keep that personal and just use that for their personal communication. And then the dual persona is going to put an app on their phone that will allow them to communicate via that app with a separate phone number to be able to text via that app in official capacity. So if they want to text, with their business colleagues or your citizens, you can do that by having that dual persona. So now they can bring their device to work, they can access email as they want to, and they can communicate on their personal side with their personal apps, and then the government side or their official side would be via this separate app. And we'll touch more on that as we get into the solutions we provide, but that's something that's very good for BYOD. Now, if you have corporate or government-owned devices, that's completely different, right? If it's a government-owned device and you're handing those out, you should be archiving everything that gets put onto that device, because that's something that you own, and you can have oversight of all the communication on that. So just be aware that, as you're probably well aware, your employees want to bring their mobile devices to work, but you still need to have that oversight of it, because that type of communication is viewed the same as other things like email or social media, when it comes to being able to produce those for litigation or for a FOIA request, or just to be compliant with these regulations.
Okay, let's again, I know you touched upon this more, the mobile and social, and how it works with Retain. Well, let's get to that now. How is Retain different from other archiving solutions? And yeah, what can Retain archive? I mean, of all the things you've talked about, what will Retain do for them?
Wonderful. So yeah, we have some time. Well, let's touch on Retain. So we like this circle because it kind of shows everything in one quick viewpoint of everything that Retain does. So Retain archives mobile communication, email communication, and social media communication. And what you see here on the slide is all the supported platforms that we currently support. And what's nice with Retain is it will grow, so there will probably be other platforms that we support in the near future. But as of now, these are the systems that we support. And first and foremost, what's great is that it supports all of these platforms uh, individually and simultaneously. And what I mean by that is that, so if you have let's give the example of multi-platform email. If you're running different email systems, and this is common for larger organizations that they will have, let's say Office 365 for certain staff, and then Gmail for a larger group of the staff, you can tie both of those to Retain, and they archive them simultaneously. So it goes into all Office 365 email is archived into Retain, and all Gmail is archived into Retain, and those are both accessible. So the end users can access their personal archive. So let's say it's a Gmail account. They can access their Gmail account with the same credentials that they would use to log into Gmail. They can log into Retain and access that. And view anything that has been archived. And then if they need to, they can quickly restore those emails back to Gmail. And then for Office 365, it's the same thing. It's viewed the same, so it looks familiar to your end users. And so it solves that problem of being able to, you know, improve productivity for your end users because they can access their archive. And then, of course, named users, legal, administrative, they can access the entire archive. So they can view the Office 365 and the Gmail from one central archive. Furthermore, the social media, it supports all these social media platforms. So all those social media information is archived into Retain, along with mobile communication, and it's all into that central archive in Retain that can be easily accessed, searched, and browsed. So now you have complete data management, right? You have access to all your electronic communication, email, social media, mobile, in that central archive that you can easily and quickly get to. And so that is what Retain archives. It archives your email communication, your social media, and your mobile, and it does it in that central archive that is easily accessible and manageable.
Awesome. So going back to the will and email in specific, actually, we get this question a lot. Um, People want to know, what should I be emailing or archiving from my email system? How far does that go? Is it just the text? Is it calendar, attachments, folders, appointments? What does that entail?
Absolutely. So when it comes to email archiving, um, what you should be archiving is you need to be archiving anything that's in your email system. So it needs to archive. You need to be archiving your email, obviously, the attachments that go along with that email, and this stuff needs to be indexed, right? So you can easily search it. You need to be archiving files, appointments, any calendar items, tasks, even public folders. And of course, Retain does that. Retain archives all of your email, all calendar, and it indexes your everything, your attachments, different attachment types, your tasks, your notes, public folders, and then the folder structure is replicated, and I'll show that in a minute, so that it looks like your email system, so that when your end users go in there, they're going to be able to, it'll look familiar to them, and they'll be able to easily search and access that. And so with Retain in particular, when it comes to email, it does archive all of that, and then it produces it in an easily searchable and format so that you can access and search the communication quickly and easily. And there's e-discovery tools that are built in. So if you need to search that archive, you can search that quickly and easily. Search by keywords. You can search by tags. There's message tagging that you can do. And then when you perform an e-discovery request, you can actually perform redaction. And all those tools are built into Retain. So if let's say you have a FOIA request and you need to produce emails, but you don't want to give them the email address, or you don't want to give them, say there's a phone number in that email that you don't want to make part of public record, or maybe even somebody's other personal information like a social security number, you can redact that, and Retain supports that natively. Another great thing that makes Retain easy to use is that there's an email plugin. This can be used if you're using Outlook or GroupWise. You can quickly get to the archive without even having to leave Outlook. All you have to do is click on the retain um, icon, and you'll see the archive data. And if you have users that are on the road often, they can actually download their archive into Outlook and access it when they're, say, flying on the plane and they don't want to pay to get go internet. They can still be productive and be able to access their archive messages because it'll be cached into Outlook. And then here I was talking about that the folder structure is replicated. So now you have the ability to, when your end users go into their personal archive to browse it, they will see their mailbox, and then they'll see all the folders that they've created and all the messages in those folders. And then, of course, when an administrator or other named user needs to search the archive, they can search the entire archive. And I have that slide that we'll show a little later on. But they can search the entire archive to be able to find the results of all the electronic communication that's archived. So the question was, what should I be archiving for my email system? And once again, it's the email, the attachments, folders, appointments, and it needs to be replicated, and Retain does that for you.
Awesome. Well, since we're already here, let's just jump right into the e-discovery portion. I mean, I know with FOIA requests and litigation, all the things, being able to discover what's in your archive is becoming more important. So, yeah, how does Retain help with e-discovery?
Let me show a couple of slides. So here's an example of a search that came back. So I searched here, and I was able to get, as you can see, all the communication that applies to that search. So I was able to see a YouTube video that applied to it, and since we archived the YouTube videos, you see that. I was able to see some tweets that came in, Facebook posts, and some text messages. Those are down there at the bottom. And so when the question is, how does it help with e-discovery? Well, you can search from one central location and search everything. And then once you have those search results, you can actually it's covered up a little bit by that, but once you have those search results, you can forward, you can export messages. So when it comes to e-discovery, you need to easily access those records, which we showed that in that search, and you need to be able to export them. And so you can export them to a PDF or a PST, or you can access to what we call the standalone archive viewer. And what that is it's a subset of your archive that can be handed off. It can be placed onto portable media like a jump drive or a DVD, or even placed, say, onto Dropbox and handed to an outside team, and it's fully indexed. So now that team can search that subset that it pertains to let's say it's the FOIA request. Everything that pertains to that that particular request can be handed off in that separate file and can be searched. And then from that standalone archive viewer, they can redact and further export to PDF if needs be. And so these tools are all included in Retain: the ability to search the central archive, forward messages, export, tag them as well. You can tag messages. So if you do a search and you want to tag them about a certain project or a certain request, you can do that. And you can also, with the search, as you can see here on this screenshot, there's a quick search, right, where you can start to type in something and it's going to suggest things that are within the archive, and those suggestions will also be highlighted within the text, making it even that much easier to find what you're looking for. And so, yes, it's easy to search and manage your data, as we were talking about before, and it's easy to respond to a FOIA request or other open records request and be prepared for an e-discovery or litigation with the built-in tools that Retain has.
Great. So, well, let's jump into how does Retain handle social media and mobile as well? Actually, while we're at it, how's the mobile archiving work through Retain, and I guess some examples if you have any.
Great, wonderful. Let's go back. My slides got a little mixed up on here. I apologize. Let's go back to social media really quick. So with social media, I talked about what you should be doing with social media. Just know that Retain does that. So Retain monitors and archives social media. And so there's full resolution pictures, videos, GIFs, and other data formats that are posted onto social media. Those are archived natively in that format into Retain, so that when you go back to view, say you want to see Facebook posts, when you go back to review those, it will be shown how it was archived. And I'll show that in just a minute. So all of the platforms you see here, Pinterest, Instagram, LinkedIn, Google+, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, um, Vimeo, and Flickr are all archived and supported in Retain, and simultaneously they can be archived. And it's archived into that same unified archive that has the email and social and mobile communication. Another great thing that Retain Social does is that you can connect to social media accounts without the login info. All you have to do is the person or account that needs to be archived, a person with credentials needs to be logged into that account. Then you send them a link to the Retain Social archive. They click on that link, and all it does is come up with a pop-up window that says, ask them to authorize that this application accesses their social media. So now they click authorize. It goes right through, just like you've seen when you authenticate things. If you're ever using an app within Facebook or sharing something on Facebook and it's asking to authenticate to your Facebook account, this with Retain Social, it does the same thing. And we've partnered with a company called Archive Social to be able to do this. And so with Retain Social and Archive Social, it works together to be able to capture that communication and archive it. Furthermore, as I talked about earlier, there's alerts for certain keywords, questions, and personal identifiable info. And with the monitoring, Retain Social with Archive Social it's almost real-time archiving. So it archives things right as they're posted. You can set it up to do that. And so then as they're archived, it's monitoring that. And so you can get almost near real-time monitoring for keywords, questions, and personal identifiable info. So if somebody asks you a question, as the example I gave earlier, you can quickly get to that through that monitoring. And what's great with what we're talking about here is the way that it connects to social media accounts is it can archive both on and off the network. It doesn't matter where a person is accessing their social media, it can be archived. And so once again, the policy will dictate how you want to do that, but Retain can archive everything. And then what's great too, in particular with YouTube and Vimeo, is that it actually archives the actual video. So this is really great for those government agencies that have a YouTube page or a Vimeo page, for example, and they're posting videos, right? And there's probably times that you're retiring videos all the time, and you want to be able to go back and see, oh, hey, remember that video from 5 years ago? What did we say there? Well, guess what? If you're archiving, it's going to be in that archive, and you can go back and view that. Here's a quick view of, like I said, how it works. Those platforms are supported with Archive Social. That's how you authenticate, and then it's pulled into Retain to be able to quickly and easily search that. Here's an example of a search and all the different platforms that are supported. And here's an example of how they'd connect to the different accounts. You just give them that link that say connect to a Facebook account. They click on that. Now it's going to, if they're logged into their Facebook account, it will ask them via that pop-up if they're going to allow that, and it will start to archive. Now with mobile, I talked about dual persona earlier, and I talked about archiving. So with Retain, it archives and supports Android, BlackBerry, and iOS. For Android and BlackBerry, it supports it natively, so the native Android text messaging and phone calls, it will archive it, and that's done via an app that's placed on the phone, and it pulls everything down. For BlackBerry, I know a lot of government agencies are using BlackBerry because of its security. It ties to the back end using the BlackBerry Enterprise Service, and it archives directly from that. And then for iOS, we've partnered with a company called CellTrust, and what CellTrust does is it provides that separate mobile app that assigns the business phone number to the phone. So that's for official communication. So if you want your users, or if your users are bringing their own device and you want them to be able to communicate in an official way, they can install that app. With that app, they can text and they can call, and that's going to be separate from the personal information, and that's now archived into Retain. And I'll show you a little diagram of that in a second. This also works with Android as well if you want to separate it out that way. So that gives you the ability to kind of have the best of both worlds, right? Now your users can use their personal side of their phone, bring their own device, and then also be able to have it for official communication. And that's viewed here, right? And so via CellTrust, if they're talking to another CellTrust user, one of the other employees, it's all encrypted and secure, and it's all archived. If they're talking or communicating with somebody who's not a CellTrust subscriber, it's encrypted and secure up until the point it hits the carrier. Then once it's sent out, that's not encrypted, but there's the oversight of it to where it's all collected and archived into Retain, and you have oversight on that. So that's how it works with social media and mobile, to be able to have that full picture of all of your electronic communication in that central archive.
Awesome, thank you. So yeah, I know I said I guess talked about the EEOC earlier. Do you have any examples of government agencies using Retain that you want to share with everybody?
Absolutely. So yeah, the EEOC is a group that is using Retain. Let me hit on a few more. Baltimore Police Department uses Retain to archive, and they've given us the green light to share this story with you. Everyone on this call, I would imagine, is aware of what happened recently in Baltimore with Freddie Gray and the court case that went on there with what the police officers were accused of. Well, what happened in the aftermath of that case is that the Department of Justice came to Baltimore Police and said, we need all of your email for the past 7 years. Luckily, Baltimore Police uses Retain, and they called us up just to make sure and called our support and said, we have all that, right? And of course, we were able to say quickly and easily, yes, you do. And we were able to help them get to those emails, that everything that regarding that case and everything else for the past 7 years, so that they could show what they were communicating and prove their side of the story. And more than anything, they were able to comply with that request from the Department of Justice to produce that. Imagine if they wouldn't have had the archive with Retain, what that could have meant to them. I don't even want to think about it, but just know that that's a huge success for us, for the Retain product, and for Baltimore Police Department, because they were able to comply with that request quickly and easily, and they were able to provide the information that was needed because it was archived in Retain, and they were able to do it quickly and without too much trouble. And so I want to bring that up for all of you government agencies out there, to know that that's a huge success, to be able to see that if you're ever involved in something like that, hopefully you aren't, but if you ever are, if you're using Retain, you can solve that issue and be able to easily get to your information. And then yes, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, they're using it with their email and soon to be social and mobile communication, to be able to fulfill requirements in archive. And now they're much happier with the way that they can manage their data. They can get to their email communication easily and quickly, and they can produce that if they're ever involved in any kind of communication thing. So they're a recent customer. They've been added on in the past couple years, and they're happy with the way Retain is able to archive all of their communication into one central archive. And then another great one we have is the LA Police Department. Their story is similar to where they have requirements that of security, and they need to be able to have those communications archived in a central location, and that location needs to be secure. And Retain has that security and has the ability for, in their case, it's an on-prem system, and they can use that on-premise and be able to have that security that they need to make sure that their information is protected, and quickly and easily accessible. So those are some of the successes that we've had, some government agencies that we've had. There's others as well. And like Sheldon said earlier, if you want to see more on exactly maybe a city and how it works, we do have cities that use us. There's a lot of local principalities that use this as well, like cities and county governments. And we can provide you with that information. I
Perfect.
just wanted to highlight a few of
Q,
them
do you
there.
want to check the Q&A and see if there are any specific chats just for you to see if there's any questions? While you're doing that, I just wanted to, I'll put in the chat here. It's a link to the Infotech vendor landscape. What that is it's like Gartner Infotech Research Group. Uh, I think this was just end of last year. They took a bunch of the most of the top archiving solutions and did a comparison of them. We're in there. If you want to take a look at that and just see some of the pros and cons of a bunch of them, there it is for you.
So it looked like some people had raised their hand. If you had a question, feel free to put that through in the chat or the Q&A, and we can answer that. Um, I don't want to unmute everyone just because we don't know what the background will be. But you know what? Let's see if we can do that really quick. Yeah, so I'm not able to unmute you at this time. You are all muted. But if you have a question, feel free to put that through in the chat, and we'll address that here. Actually, it looks like okay. Looks like Mickey had a question and Bernita. Let's see if I can unmute them here. But yeah, if that hand raise that you did was for a question, please put that through in the chat, and we'll get to that.
Hi, this is Mickey.
Hi, Mickey.
Hi. Say, can you direct me to, we spoke about policy, basically a boilerplate policy that we could access. I don't want to let that get away from me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So the one that we have is it's a sample social media policy, and that is in the chat if you saw that there. If not, Mickey, I can be sure. I can also email it to you as well. Okay, awesome. Okay, any other questions out there? So I'll just finish up by saying the next steps for you to do. Obviously, everyone who's on this call will get a recording to this webinar. I'd encourage you to review it. And then if you want to see how this will work for your organization, we can schedule a personalized demo, and you can ask any questions on how it could particularly work for your government agency, and feel free to reach out to us with any questions you may have, or you can even ask us for a quote to see how Retain could be priced for you. So yeah, I'd encourage you to do that, and thanks everyone for being here and for your participation and for listening to this short webinar.
Yes, again, thank you. Just want to let you know this was recorded, and that link will be sent out to everyone as well. Along with that link, Mickey, we'll add that social media policy and the link to the Infotech report on that email as well. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and we hope to see you on future webinars. Thanks.